Welcome to our posts. Today we will see stories of am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for not including my sister-in-law in photos during my bachelorette party because she wore white? I'm getting married, yay, and my brother John asked me to include his girlfriend Sarah as a bridesmaid as a way to get her involved with our family since he wants to propose soon. I wasn't happy. She's quite snobbish, almost in a comically villainous way. She once made fun of the fact that I get most of my groceries from the local big box supercenter and not somewhere with more high quality product. But I love John and it mattered a lot to him, so I agreed. Onto the issue, on the final night of my bachelorette party, we decided to have one big meal that was really pricey and fancy that we all saved up for. Sarah said she had to take an emergency work meeting and for us to go ahead first. The restaurant was walkable from our hotel. Guys, when Sarah showed up, I was floored. She came in a white sparkly sequin number with a tulle skirt and a tiara. When we were planning the trip, my maid of honor made it abundantly clear that everyone was supposed to wear pink so we could get a really cute photo together at the restaurant. I'm not even kidding, her outfit was so bridal looking the waitress actually asked if we were having a joint bachelorette party. I was so upset that when it came time to take photos, I absolutely refused to have Sarah in them. She said it wasn't her fault because she didn't get the memo, but I told her it was common sense to not wear a bridal-looking dress to a bachelorette party if you're not the bride. Plus, she was in the group chat and even made comments about another girl's outfit when we were talking about what we wanted to wear, so I know she knew. All of my friends were on my side and they made sure she didn't end up in the photos. When we got home, she pitched a fit to my brother saying that we bullied her at my party and deliberately left her out. She was also pissed because a lot of family and friends noticed she wasn't in the photos and I wasn't afraid to tell them exactly why. My brother's really upset though because she's been crying and whining about it non-stop since. Apparently they're both so mad that they're going to skip Father's Day brunch, so the whole thing is blowing up even more. I'm starting to feel bad because my mom told me that my brother and Sarah were fighting a lot now, so I'm not sure if I'm being the a-hole here. My brother called me a bridezilla, but I really feel like Sarah was trying to ruin my night. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not letting my sister-in-law hold our baby? My wife and I just brought home our beautiful baby. When we got home, I wanted my older son to hold the baby, he is 14, but my wife said no. She said she wasn't comfortable with anyone but us holding the baby yet. I wasn't happy about this, but I respect that, as a mom, she's anxious about how vulnerable our baby is. So I let it go. Yesterday her sister came over and wanted to hold the baby. I said no, that my wife and I aren't comfortable with anyone but us holding him yet. My wife then said it was fine, that her sister was a special case. I said no, that I wasn't comfortable with it. Her sister was offended and left. My wife is angry with me and says I was an a-hole to her sister. I think I am just being consistent. Was I an a-hole to my sister-in-law? Next story. Am I the a-hole for not letting my sister use the family property for her upcoming wedding? I am 25, my sister is 29, I also have a younger sister, 8. When I was 14, my mom sent me to live with her parents. Her excuse was that they needed me to help out. I believe she just didn't want to deal with a growing male teen. My grandparents owned an amazing property in the mountains that has an amazing view. We also have some horses and other critters. They were also quite wealthy as well. They both passed 4 years ago a month apart. They gave me the property because I would appreciate and respect it more, while my mom and sisters got money and other assets, overall valued more than the property. In the past 4 years, I turned part of the property into a venue for mainly weddings. GPs knew of this idea and thought it was a good one. We are busy and usually booked about 8 months out. My sister got engaged 1.5 years ago and said she wasn't to get married at the property. I said yes, just let me know the date as soon as possible so I can make sure it is booked. I never got a date. I followed up several times and kept asking her, and she would brush me off. 2 weeks ago, I got the wedding invitation, stating the property is the location and the date, which is in September of this year. I immediately called her to say that we have booked for that date and can't accommodate her. Well, now her, my mom, other family, her partner's family, as well as other flying monkeys have been blowing up on me. They are also calling and writing reviews for my business. I asked them to stop and call my sister, telling her that I literally all she had to do was tell me when she knew her date so I could block it and I would take care of everything else. She went off on how I am ruining her day. It is our family's property. How she already sent out the invitations and couldn't go back now. I should just tell the other couple to cancel. They have been on the books for over a year now, and I actually like them. Family is more important. After the last big blow up, I started communicating strictly through the business, using our recorded line as well as email. I suggested 3 other dates around the same time, but that's not good enough. I'm being resentful and an a-hole. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to pay for my boyfriend's food and his birthday and getting him banned from a restaurant? I, 18 female, have been dating my boyfriend, John, 20 male, for a little under a year. We have a pretty toxic-free relationship, but there's quite a bit of tension when it comes to me being vegetarian. I've been vegetarian since 11 and I have very strict morals around it. The one thing John has a problem with is me refusing to spend my money on meat. Ever since I started making my own money, I swore to myself that I would never spend a cent of it on meat. On our dates, we usually split the bill and sometimes he pays for it all. I told him if he orders something meat-free, I'd happily pay for both of us, but he never does. When he pays for my food, it's when I've spent money on the activity. Normally concerts and festivals. That's me paying €120 plus on tickets and him spending maybe €50 on food. His birthday was a few days ago and we went out for dinner at his favorite fancy restaurant. He got the most expensive steak they had along with a side salad and a bottle of wine. When we finished our food, I asked the waiter to split the bill and John looked at me shocked. He asked if I was joking and I said no. Then he told me he thought I was going to pay since it was his birthday and he didn't budget for the meal. I asked him why he thought I'd pay since I'd been very clear about my rule, but he couldn't give me a reason other than it being his birthday. I told him I'd pay for the wine and the side salad, but he'd need to pay for the steak. He was furious with me and stormed off to the bathroom. I paid for my meal, the wine and the salad and waited for him to come back. He didn't. After waiting for 20 minutes, I left. I found him sitting on a bench near where we parked the car. I asked him why he left and reminded him he needed to pay. He looked shocked when I said that and asked me if I didn't pay. I told him I'd paid for everything but the meat and he lost it. He started yelling at me, telling me I was selfish, that I needed to grow up. I stayed calm and told him he needed to go back and pay. He scoffed and walked away. I ended up driving home without him. Now he's saying it's my fault that he can't show his face in his favorite restaurant since he dined and ditched. It's a pretty small restaurant, so he'd 100% be recognized and kicked out. So, am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for not helping my family's restaurant because my brother was being paid and I wasn't? I am 17 years old girl and my parents recently came into a fair bit of money, inheritance from one of my mom's elderly relatives I think, and decided to buy out a local ice cream shop that was going out of business. They love that place because it's where they met and has tons of sentimental meaning to them. They also hired my 18-year-old brother to work there because they want him to have job experience before going off to college. They didn't offer to hire me, and I didn't ask because I already have a fast food job. Anyway, my house is pretty close to the shop, and my friends and I decided to meet up there yesterday for ice cream and to hang out. For reference, we're a group of 4 high schoolers. It was pretty busy, so we got in line. About a minute in, my brother came out of the back and waved me over. He handed me an apron and asked me to help out his co-worker in the back because they had to clean the machines as soon as possible, but my brother had to open a second register because of how busy it was. I refused on the grounds that I wasn't being paid, and he said that I had to help out because it's the family business and because of how swamped the place was and how panicked his co-worker was. He even offered to let my friends skip the line if I helped out for 10 minutes to give his co-worker a hand, and said I owed it to him to help out because I'd brought such a big group in. I decided that would cause a scene in a packed shop, and refused again. He huffed and waved me off, then went to open the second register. I went back to my friends and the rest of our meetup went well, but my brother kept giving me dirty looks until we got our cones and left. Later that night, my parents confronted me and said that what I did was petty. They told me to work a shift the next day to make up for it, but backed off once I reminded them that I have an actual job that I was scheduled to work pretty much all day the next day. I ended up getting off scot-free. However, my whole family maintains that I'm petty and lazy, and now I'm wondering if they're right. So, am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for leaving my surprise wedding because I felt blindsided? Last week, I, 30 female, was invited to a supposedly fancy party by my longtime boyfriend, Mark, 32 male. We had been dating for 5 years, and while we had discussed marriage before, there were no immediate plans for a wedding. Excited about the event, I dressed up in my best attire and arrived at the designated venue. As I entered the grand hall, I was completely taken aback to see all of our family, friends, and acquaintances gathered, eagerly waiting. It turns out, Mark had orchestrated an elaborate surprise wedding for us without my knowledge. Everyone erupted into applause as I stood there, shocked and overwhelmed. I just felt a mix of emotions. While I love Mark and had dreamed of our future together, the idea of getting married without any prior discussion or consent felt like a breach of trust. So, I pulled Mark aside and tried to express my concerns and reservations about the surprise wedding. I explained that I wanted a say in the planning process, to be part of the decision-making, and to have the chance to prepare mentally and emotionally for such a significant milestone in our lives. However, Mark dismissed my concerns, saying that he thought it would be a romantic gesture and that I would be thrilled. In that moment, I faced a difficult choice: go along with the surprise wedding, putting on a smile despite feeling unsettled, or stand up for my autonomy and voice my true feelings. I ultimately made the decision not to proceed with the surprise wedding, much to the disappointment and confusion of our guests. Now, I find myself at odds with Mark, our families, and even some of our friends who believe I overreacted and spoiled a beautiful moment. However, I firmly believe that a marriage should be a joint decision, with open communication and shared expectations. Everyone's excuse for this is I have always talked about marrying Mark. And again, the problem isn't marrying him, the problem is not having any say in my wedding. Mark thought I'd appreciate it, because I always spoke about how stressful planning a wedding must be. Yes, I think it's stressful, it is, but I'd still like planning one. After this whole ordeal, everyone asked if Mark and I were ending things, in which I replied no. I emphasized towards them and Mark I still wanted to marry him, and most feel like this is making me more of an a-hole since I just wasted a perfectly fine wedding. So am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my own surprise wedding, even though it was intended as a romantic gesture? I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel or posts.